Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. Before I get anywhere in this video, a couple things really quick. First of all, I know I said that the last video that I did was actually going to be my last video of the year. Well, that kind of changed. But I did want to get this out before MagFest. If you guys are at MagFest, I will be there. I don't have any panels or anything whatsoever there, but I would love to meet some of you guys there. Content creator or fan alike. So, if you're going to be at Mag, I'd love to catch up with you. But, this is obviously going to be a very, very different video. This will have nothing to do with Japan, it will have nothing to do with culture, it has nothing really to do with what I usually do. But sometimes I really do feel like I need to make a video on something that's really near and dear to me. And I think this is kind of important. So, I know the title of this video seems kind of weird, like how to be a happy YouTuber in 2020, which is last thing I would be talking about, right? Or seemingly talk about, but it's interesting because I see so much talk about how we're in this new decade now. Like there's all this talk of like what was the best thing that happened in the last decade, from 2010 to 2020, things like that. And I think between 2010 and 2020, we've seen the explosion of what is YouTube. We've seen all kinds of people, whether they be low-range, mid-range, or high-range YouTubers, like really take off. And there's been enough time, in my opinion, that we can kind of see the rise and fall of some of the more popular people, some of the other popular YouTubers, and it's hard to talk about being happy as a YouTuber. You know, I should probably also preface this video with, this video isn't necessarily more for you guys, like my viewers and such. This is something more for all of the people that I've met, all the YouTubers that I have met over the last 6, 7, 8 years who have been struggling. I have talked and met with so many people, so many other YouTubers who are struggling, and they feel like they can't talk about this kind of thing. And It drives me crazy that we live that we can't talk about these things when it's so important to talk about these things. The reason why it's so hard to talk about what's wrong is because so much goes wrong beyond our control. And as I said, I've met dozens of people who feel like that they've lost, dozens of YouTubers who feel like they've lost so much, and it is completely out of their control. Myself included. We'll get to that in a minute. And because there's all this loss, it's like you have this horrible feeling of helplessness in a system where you feel like you just can't deal with it. Whether it be because of the entertainment side of things, or it because the algorithmic side of things. Either way, there's so many things that we just cannot control. And it's interesting because I've seen this in the most minuscule and humble of YouTubers to some of the biggest I've ever seen. You know, for those of you who may not know, I used to work on the Game Theorist channel, you know? That channel now has almost 12 million subscribers. People tend to forget that I was on there before the million milestone. I was there back, shoot, when the Game Theorist had about 300,000. And I mean, that's kind of something that's interesting, because I know there's going to be a lot of content creators that are going to be like, Gaijin, what do you know about all this? I've never even heard of you. But it's interesting because I feel like the things that I have gone through, we're all going through. All of us are going through. Whether it be someone with 12 million subscribers, someone with 2 million, 1 million, 600,000, 100,000, 50,000, the numbers don't matter. We're all going through the same thing, and I don't think anyone's really talking about it. I want to talk about it, especially because of the new decade. This is the time to talk about these kinds of things because it's the new decade. But let me preface all of this a little bit. Before I start throwing out advice that may be unwanted to people, let me preface about who I am and what I've been going through, because there is a lot that I have been through that maybe some of you guys don't know about me, or about with me. So I started my YouTube journey back in 2012. 8 some odd years ago. I built up a small audience off platform. I started off on Screw Attack of all places, and just kind of went from there. It's interesting. I remember how big a deal it was when I hit 300 followers up on that site. And then from there, MatPat picked me up. Put me on the Game Theory channel because the kinds of content that we did was very similar. He focused on the math and science, I focused on the cultural. It was still the same kind of content. And from there on, I was with the Game Theorist for 6 years. That's a long time, especially on the internet. It's a very, very long time. And for the majority of my time there, a lot of my content would get anywhere from 600,000 to maybe 1 to 2 million views, averaging at about 1 million views back during the heyday, back 2014, 2015, 2016, something like that. And it was a long time. And that's a lot of people. That's a whole lot of people. But we had a breakaway. And it was no one's fault, really. I've never publicly talked about my breaking away of the Theorist channel, and I'm actually kind of glad no one's ever really brought it up, because it was never a malicious thing. I will say that it was a metric that caused the division. It was not Matt. It was not anyone else in the group. It was none of those other things. I still hold Matt in such high regard. But it had to do with a metric. It had to do with something outside of control of me, had something out of control of Matt, and it was what it was. It was a change in the algorithm that caused my content on there to be detrimental to the channel. It was not something that I wanted, but I was responsible for the things that had happened. I was not at fault for the things that happened, but I had to be responsible, and Matt had to be responsible in the decisions that were made. Put a pin on that. This is important, and it's going to be coming back very, very shortly. But I want you guys to visualize going from 1 million views every single upload to 100,000. That's still a big number. I don't want to sit here and try to say that no, that's not a big number. That's a huge number, 100,000. 100,000 is more people than most stadiums in this country that seats people. I get that. But it was literally a 90% cutoff. My audience, and again, it's not even really about, it wasn't really about the money, but just the sheer amount of people. Think about that. YouTubers who are watching me, anyone who has ever had a video that cracked 1 million views, and anyone who has depended on consistency, think about that. Think about going from 1 million to 100,000. You're going down to 10%. That's what I went through last year. It was nobody's fault. It was an algorithmic thing. It was a metric thing. But I was still responsible for it. And that hurt. It hurt a whole lot, which I'm sure any YouTuber watching this can imagine. But ever since then, things have been going decent. I started streaming. That made all the difference in the world. And my content was still, on my channel, my content was seeing 100,000, 200,000 when it was really, really good, but it averaged out about 100,000. That's what it was. And I was able to make peace with that. That became my personal metric. Hitting 100,000 was my metric. I had gotten over the fact that I was no longer with the Theorist, that my content was never going to see a million views ever again. I made peace with that. But then something else happened, and it happened this year. 6 months ago, I put out a Witch Ninja video, and it did really bad. It got about 80,000, which is pretty rough considering the video before that had 140,000. And ever since that video, it has been an extreme rarity that I ever hit 100,000 views. So, despite the fact that 50,000 people is still a lot of people, I have not forgotten about that. But it's a halving. Half of my audience disappeared. And I don't know if it was the content that I made. I don't know if it was on YouTube's end, if it was an algorithmic thing. I don't know what happened. My network doesn't know what happened. YouTube doesn't even know what happened. No one knows what happened. And I cannot tell you how spiraling that felt to have seen half of my audience just completely disappear. And I had no idea why. If I knew why, I could fix the problem. Any YouTuber watching this will tell you, if we know what the problem is, we will fix it. We don't sit on our hands and complain at the fact that something bad happened. We work to fix it. Every YouTuber worth their salt We'll say that. But when there is no control, you just go crazy. And you don't know why. You don't know what happened. 2019 has been a spiraling depression year for me, as it has been for so many other YouTubers. My story is not unique. I've heard from so many other YouTubers, or people who know other YouTubers, that have talked about only getting 10% of their viewership, 5% of their viewership, 2% of their viewership. The reason why I want to make this video is because this has been one of the worst years. And don't even get me started on COPPA. Don't even get me started on COPPA. I'm okay. A lot of my friends are not okay. And even then, even though I feel personally okay, there's no telling. There's no telling what's going to happen. YouTubers, we feel powerless. We feel like we have no control over our own livelihood. And you guys watching, who are the viewers, have no idea how much you guys mean to us. Even in the context of millions of viewership, but millions of people watching. You individually matter so much. You have no idea how much you matter. And the only reason we can't tell you is because we're blessed with so many that we can't go individually to 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 1 million. We can't do that. But damn if we don't want to. But the point I'm trying to make is that 2019's been a hard year for everyone. It's very hard to be happy as a YouTuber in 2019. And looking at 2020, with things like COPPA on the cusp of the year, it looks even more difficult to be happy in 2020. I have been dealing with horrible bouts of depression, horrible bouts of just unable to make content. And there have been so many times where I felt like I had to give up, but I haven't. It's interesting because I've always been wondering what to do, and what it really took was getting away this holiday season, getting away from this for just 4 days, thinking on what had been happening for the entire year, getting some good books. I'll try to recommend them if I can. One of which is titled something that I really can't say without being age-gated, but The Subtle Art of Not Giving a... Alright? I think you guys can get that one. That's the book that's made all the difference to me. But what I've learned by getting away from here and revaluing and really rethinking about everything that's been going on, I've been able to figure out not only how to move forward, but how to be happy doing it in light of everything terrible that's not only happened to me, but happened to all you guys, all you other YouTubers. Out of all these things that have happened, I found a way to be happy with it. And these are things that I wanted to share, you know, not just with you guys as YouTubers who might be watching this, but anyone who's been having a hard time. These are amazing things that I've learned that I think are really worth being shared. And these are in no particular order, either. None of these have more importance than the other, but all of them equally important. So let's get on with that. I talked about this before when I was, talking about my own hardships, but you are not at fault, but you are responsible. Something that has been kind of a bother for a very long time is this notion that fault and responsibility are the same thing. They're not the same thing. In the book that I read, they made the example of if a baby shows up on your doorstep, it is not your fault that that baby is there, but it is your responsibility to decide what to do about it. And that's kind of the difference going on here. Except instead of us getting a baby, it's the system that screws us, you know? You've been screwed by the system. You are not at fault, but you are responsible for doing something about it. One of the things that's been grating on me is that I've seen so many content creators who will sit there and say, I got screwed, there's nothing I can do about it. You always have choice. You always have choice. Even sitting there saying that I don't have a choice is a choice in itself. Because you are choosing to believe that. there is not much we can do about the system that is ever changing when it comes to YouTube. Even YouTube itself doesn't necessarily have complete control over what it's doing. COPPA is a great example of that. COPPA is forcing a lot of change on a lot of people. And it is not our fault. It is not our fault that this happened. But we're still responsible for it. And this ties into some other things. But another big thing that really, really needs to be talked about is morals and metrics. Metrics always change. Morals don't necessarily have to. And when I say morals, I'm not talking about choosing the high ground or having moral superiority or anything like that. I'm talking about what it is that makes something important. What is an important value? I guess a value would be a better way to word this, but it's your values, your morals and your values. What are they? And the thing is that the metric that we use to gauge whatever it is that our moral or value is, especially when it comes to YouTube, is constantly changing. Case in point, for the longest time, I've wanted so hard to hit 600,000 subscribers. I've been very close. All year, it's been like 500, it's like 96,000, something like that. It's like, if I could just get 4,000 more subscribers, I could hit that 600K, and then I'd be happy. I'd be fine with it. It'd be fine. For other people, it's like, if I could just hit 1 million subscribers. If I could just hit 1 million subscribers, I'll be happy. I've made it. There it is. It's not a good metric. It's not a good metric for a multitude of reasons. One is because it changes, especially when it comes to YouTube. These metrics change. Subscribers don't matter. The number of subscribers you have does not matter on YouTube anymore. It used to matter a whole heck of a lot. But ever since their metrics changed from minutes watched or views or anything like that, the switching of those have made subscriptions basically obsolete because of all the hoops that viewers have to go through now. Not only do you have to subscribe, you have to get notified. And not only do you have to be notified, but you have to keep watching a certain person's content in order to see their content appear more and more in suggestions. That's how it works now. It's a change in metric. So for me to say that 600,000 or 1 million subscribers, if I get that, then I'll be happy, it doesn't make any sense because the metric has changed. One of the things that I have to do personally is I have to change what my metric is when it comes to what I think success is. And at this point, it is the difference between subscriptions and money, honestly. Because financially speaking, I'm fine. Granted, I have I have other means of gaining income at this point, such as streaming, Patreon, things like that. But in order for me to stay happy in 2020 as a YouTuber, I have to change what my metric is. It has to go from my viewership and my subscriptions to, am I still providing for myself, for my wife, for my family? That's one of the ways that I'm able to find happiness going into 2020. Because to have any other sort of arbitrary goal, it's you're not only going to have a terrible metric in order to gauge it on, but you're going to have a terrible value. I mean, let's say you hit 600, for me, let's say I hit 600,000. Let's say one of you guys hits 1 million subscribers. Now what? You know? What is it that you're going to be working towards now? 2 million? And then what happens when you hit there? That's not what's going to make you happy. Especially as a content creator, that's not what's going to make you happy. I know that. The next thing, and this is very, very specific to YouTube, is that you have to plan to fail even when you're succeeding. It's because it's the nature of how fame works. I've been around long enough, and I know a lot of other YouTubers that have been around long enough to see their soaring numbers, to see their soaring popularity, and then cap. And then sometimes decrease. In my case, it is a lot of decrease. So what you have to do, you have to plan to fail. You have to plan to fail not only to increase your viewership, your subscriptions, your fan base, blah, 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 whatever, but you have to be ready for that to kind of fall apart at least a little bit. Because fame doesn't last. It can't. Unless you do something monumental, which only a handful of people in this world have done, and most of them have only done it because they've been evil about it, Fame does not last, but success does. I've learned this through my process. Through the 6 years of me doing YouTube, I've learned that fame does not last, but success does. And the reason why is because as you are building up that fandom, that community, whatever, they stick around. You'll have a lot of fall off. You know, in my case, it was I had millions of people watching my content, and then it just dropped off. It just kind of fell apart. But that does not necessarily mean that I was not successful. Crazy story. I had a really good YouTuber friend of mine. I don't want to mention names. We were out eating while they were over here visiting at a con, and I showed them my numbers. And they looked at them and they're like, man, you might want to start considering another line of work, you know? Because my viewership has been not doing great. But the funny thing is then I started talking about streaming, and I started talking about how successful it was despite being much smaller in scale. Like, to be completely candid, I make 3 times as much streaming with less than 1%. With 0.01%, I would say, of the viewership that I would have over on YouTube. So it's not like I'm failing, you know? Another thing that I've noticed too, and this really does apply to all of us, myself included, is this concept of Manson's law of avoidance. Let me break this down for you. The more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid doing it. We as YouTubers get really, really sucked up in the one thing that made us popular. I've seen this happen so much, is that there will be a YouTuber who gets really, really popular with one kind of content, and then they do that content over and over and over, ad nauseum, and it drives them crazy. And the audience, you know, the audience still wants it, they still love it, they still enjoy it, and that's something to be respected and admired, you know? But the problem is that we always change. Whether we want our content to change or not, YouTube creators, our content changes. Sometimes it can be something big, such as going from one particular game, anime, topic, whatever, to a completely different one. Sometimes it can be much smaller than that. In my case, it was going from Culture Shock to messing around with Witch Ninja to see how that goes, to messing around with Yokai Hunters to see how that worked. Still talking about the same stuff. Still talking about Japanese culture and games, anime, and things like that, but with different little takes. We do that so we don't go crazy. Me talking to you guys, the viewers, this is how we don't go crazy. But the problem is that we as YouTubers, if we're going to be on this platform for any longer than like 3 or 4 years, we have to evolve and change. We have to change to what is popular, formats that are popular, the expectations of the audience, expectations of our own audience. I know a lot of people in my audience who are like, you should just be yourself on camera more. Right? And to just kind of get rid of little G and just do my own thing. I'm experimenting with that idea. But it's terrifying to do it. And one of the things that I've seen happen with so many YouTubers is that the way that they used to do things no longer works. Myself included, I've been through this. The way that we used to do things doesn't work anymore. So we have to adapt. We don't have to adapt our morals, our values. But just like how our metrics have to change, the way we do things has to change, and that threatens our identity. If someone was to come up to me and say, hey Gaijin, you can't talk about culture anymore, you'd have to talk about something else, I'd freaking freak out. Because that threatens who I am, that threatens my identity. Even something as small as, hey Gaijin, you can't use... This actually happened. When I was with a theorist, it came to a point where I could not use little g anymore. And because of that, I felt terrible, I felt horrible, I felt twisted, like something was wrong. Because it threatened my identity. My identity online was through little g, doing my own little skits. You guys know how it went. And that changed so dramatically. And I absolutely hated it, but at the same time, it was better for me because now I can do things like this. I can be myself for you guys, in front of you guys, instead of always having to be dependent on being in character and sometimes not being taken seriously. But YouTubers, that's something that we all need to recognize about ourselves and take it from a YouTuber who's been through it. We have to be careful of Manson's law of avoidance. We have to be self-aware. In order to be happy, we have to be self-aware of the things that we must change in order to keep moving forward. We can't keep focusing on what used to work but now doesn't. And as much as that sucks to do, that's something that I think inevitably will make us happy, because we will be able to try new things, and sometimes things will work and sometimes it won't. But I think overall, that'll make us happier. This one drives me crazy. This next one, I said this wasn't in any particular order, but I think if I had to order it, this would be at the top. It is what I call the rival fallacy. This is something very specific with YouTube and YouTubers. I can't stand it. It makes no sense, and I hate the fact that we're still doing it. Is this idea? It's this dumb idea that because one person does one kind of content that's similar to me, that automatically means that they are my rival and I have to do better than them. I have done that. I've done that recently. Case in point, I just got done doing a video a couple weeks back talking about Pokemon in the Galar region and what they have to do with their English counterparts, right? Loxton, who is a good dude, turned around and did a 40-minute video talking about all of the different Pokemon specific to Galar and all their origins, cultural or otherwise. My video got about 100,000 views. His video, last time I checked, and that was a while ago, was at 160,000 views. At this point, it may even be up to 200,000 to 300,000 views. Normally, any YouTuber would see that as competition. It's not. Guys, we're not competing with each other. I don't care what anyone says. Whether you are a reviewer, whether you are a Let's Player, we are not in competition with each other. You want to know why? Because we are individuals. People come to us. Audiences come to us because what we have to offer as people, as individuals, as personalities, that's what they care about. Matt did a video a long time about this, and I'm really surprised that it hasn't stuck with a lot of people. We're not rivals to each other. In fact, if nothing else, we need to watch each other's backs more, specifically because we're in a system that is not looking out for us. We're in a system where we can lose everything tomorrow. I'm not going to mention names on this one. There was a musician YouTuber who literally his account was gone because of false claims. His entire account gone the next day. No strikes, no warning, no nothing. It was gone. And the only way that we were able to get it back was me and a couple other bigger YouTubers, people bigger than me, made a big stink about it. And he did get his channel back. We have got to watch out for each other more, guys. Another point of contention that I've seen when it comes to YouTubers rivaling with other YouTubers is this idea of, oh, this person's a complete sellout, so I don't want to work with them, I don't want anything to do with them, I think they're garbage. And it's like, let's be real with each other. YouTubers, let's be real with each other. There have been times that we've done something, we've promoted something because we needed the money. That just is the bottom line of it. We try to the viewers, we try very, very hard to be careful about the things that we do try to promote. I mean, I'm just going to be completely candid here. In 2019 alone, I've probably passed up maybe about $20,000 to $40,000 worth of brand deals because they weren't good. But this notion of this person just sells out all the time, it's a completely dehumanizing thing. And we gotta look out for each other better than this, guys. It does not matter what it is that we do, if it's similar content, if it's different content. We're working in a system that is actively working against us, and we're going after each other like this. The only way that some of us are ever gonna stick around is if we look out for each other. And this is something that just boggles my mind. I understand that collabs are hard to do because of the time investment, the fact that some audiences don't like a new person coming in to do something. Trust me, as someone who's done a lot of collabs in the past, there have been quite a few times where an audience did not like the fact that I was there. But it doesn't have to necessarily just be that. But we gotta be better about this, guys. we cannot give in to the rival fallacy, because we're not in competition with each other. That's what we want ourselves to think, because we are apes. We're very sociable and highly functional, but we are apes, and we always think that we're in competition with someone else. We're not. We just have to be us. Next point is something that is really interesting, because I don't think a lot of YouTubers talk about it, and it has a lot to do with our beginnings. And it's this concept of rock bottom is the beginning, and rock bottom happens over and over and over again. You could apply this to just business in general, because I think it does share the same kind of nature. And I hate to assume here, but is it fair, YouTubers who are watching this, is it fair to say that we all have kind of had the same beginning of we had nothing else that we could do? Whether it's we couldn't find a job, or we just got out of school, we didn't know what to do, so we just kind of started something. We worked on YouTube. We started a couple of projects. We made a series. We did something, and we kept working at it because we were at rock bottom. There was nowhere else to go but up, and we kept at it long enough. We eventually went up. What we're seeing now is that rock bottom is becoming cyclical. It's not up and stay up. It's kind of becoming, for me especially, it's very cyclical. I feel like I'm starting to hit another kind of rock bottom, whether it be because of the situation of all this stuff on YouTube's metrics, or algorithm I should say, that I can't control, or people are getting bored of my content. Whichever, there's still a rock bottom going on here. And I've been hearing from a lot of other YouTubers who are like, oh, I don't have the same views that I had anymore. I feel like things are getting worse. It's been worse before. It's just we've seen such a huge level of success that now that we're seeing another rock bottom, we're terrified. And that's human. That's normal. But that can't be the fear that we have, because that makes no sense. Guys, we started off at rock bottom. For me, I came back from the JET program and had nothing else I could do. A lot of my college was devoted to getting into the JET program. Once I did my 2 years and came back, I didn't have anything. I was at a rock bottom. I was working a job that would pay nothing ever. But I decided to try to do YouTube, and it worked out. Again, is it not fair to say that that's how it was for a lot of us? So, instead of looking at this new rock bottom of everything is falling apart, it's not. Everything's fallen apart before. We just have to pick it back up. And something to kind of go on with this idea of rock bottom happening over and over again, and the recreation of the self over and over again, it's the idea that our greatest achievements happen during the greatest adversity. You know, the reason why we became big, you know, like, I don't want to lump sum, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but when we got big when we were facing our greatest adversity, whether it be because we were broke or we were stuck with our parents, etc., etc. The greatest things that we've achieved happened because we were at one of our lowest points. Never ever forget, guys, that because we were at a low point in our life, we were able to swing it back up into something. And when you're going to be reinventing yourself or reinventing your content, like what I'm attempting to do starting in January, you have to look at it as, yeah, it's a great adversity, but that's where the most memorable things come from. The next thing is something that actually my dad taught me, and this actually is one of the key things that has kept me happy and will keep me happy into 2020, is that busy people get lucky. And to define that, that is to say that if you keep doing and doing and doing, trying and trying, getting better and better and better, and you don't stop, you have a better chance of something happening. If you, the viewer, were to try to get into YouTube or streaming or whatever, and you had this one big project, and you did the one big project once, and then it didn't go anywhere, and you stopped, the likelihood of you ever getting anywhere is infinitesimally smaller than the person who kept rolling out more and more projects. And that's kind of the hard truth of not just YouTube, and not just streaming, and not just online entertainment, but any business whatsoever. You have to keep going. And I know that can be daunting, especially when YouTube really is this kind of treadmill platform where if you stop running, you essentially fade away. But the idea of not only becoming big on YouTube in the first place, but staying where you are, or better yet, if you're in a transitionary period, going from one type of content to another to try and reestablish or reinvent yourself, you keep going. You know, I did Yokai Hunters for a good solid month and a half, something like that, a long time comparatively, actually probably longer than that. And I still want to try because I want to see if it's going to go somewhere, because I've seen it go into some places. Guys, remember how long it took you to get to your first 1,000 subs, or your first 100,000, your first 500,000, your million. It took a long time. And to try and reinvent yourself is going to take an equally long amount of time, so you have to keep going at it. Finally, the last thing that I learned that is going to make me happy as a YouTuber going into 2020 is just the concept of doing something. It kind of goes back to what I talked about with busy people get lucky. But do something. Not for the sake of doing it, because we have this weird misconception that the way that motivation works is that you have an emotional experience which builds motivation, and then you have your action. That's not how it works. It's not linear, it's cyclical. There's a lot of cyclical nature from what I've learned about staying happy as a YouTuber. Action is the cause of motivation, not the result. For those of you, for any of you YouTubers watching this, think about a time where you were just you just had no idea what to do. You had no idea what to create, but you sat down with a notepad, or you sat down with Office or something like that, and you just started hammering out ideas. You started hammering out a script, something like that. A lot of times, when you just throw stuff out there, more things connect. Eventually, you actually find better things. In the book that I was reading, the example was this great author who wrote, I think it was something like a novel a month, or like a novel every 2 weeks, something like that. And people would ask him, how is it that you're able to write so much? And he said, 200 crappy words a day. It's this idea of, even if you don't know what you're doing, do something, because eventually it'll follow. Especially if you're doing something that you're already established. For me, when I'm sitting down trying to come up with an idea, I sit down and I think to myself, what's a good game or a good show or something like that? And what are some things that I can break down on it? And I start to do the research into it. Or if I'm really stuck on how in the world am I going to script this particular video, I don't sit around and think too hard about it. You just do it. You just kind of go at it. And that motivation comes to you through your action. It's not that you are inspired by something, then you get the motivation. Content creation is not usually done by, I have an emotional state, something emotional happens, then I have motivation to do something, and then I go. It doesn't work like that all the time. It is more cyclical than anything. So one of the things that I've been doing, and it has kept me happy as a YouTuber going into 2020, is to keep going, keep doing. Because the moment you stop and you overthink it or you doubt yourself, you're killing yourself. Just do. Action is the cause of motivation, not the result. And busy people get lucky. Those two things go so hand in hand when it comes to stuff like this. Never ever forget it. And honestly, those are the things that are keeping me happy as a YouTuber going in 2020. I just realized that I've been rambling on for the last 40 minutes. I didn't expect this video to be this long, but everything that I said I felt was really important to say. These are things that I have gone through as someone who has really made it big, and then as someone who saw so much of that fall away, and suffering under a system that feels like I have no control over. All of these things that I've been talking about have lifted me up so much. There's so much that we're going to have to deal with in the new decade when it comes to being a YouTuber. Even right into 2020 with COPPA and everything that's going to be coming with that. COPPA is just the beginning. We're going to have so much that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to deal with more regulations. We're going to have to deal with so much more. But you don't have to be unhappy. Everything that I've talked about in the last 40 minutes, I wanted to share with you guys, particularly you YouTubers who care even a little about what I have to say, because these are things that have kept me going and things that have kept me happy through this time. And now more than ever, it's really hard to be happy as a YouTuber. But I think through these things, happiness can come. So, thanks for listening, guys. I do appreciate it. Like I said before, I will be at MagFest, content creator or viewer or fan, whatever. I want to come out and see you guys. I don't have any panels or anything, but by the time you're watching this, I may very well be at MagFest, so I hope to see some of you guys there. Have faith, guys. This isn't the end. A lot is happening, but this is not the end, and it's only ever the end when you decide that it's over. Don't ever feel like it's over, because it's only over when you decide it to be. Thank you guys so much, and until next time, everyone, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.